A warm welcome to another edition of the Wellness Talk podcast. I am George Batista, your host and your wellness advocate. Wellness Talk is a show that goes over the latest in health, healing, nutrition, fitness, everything we can do to lead a healthy life in a natural way. We've got great information as always this week. Two big topics for you. The first, an article from Wellness Resources, is brand new information: brain fog and irritability linked to glial cell health. Some of you may know, some of you may not know what glial cells are. So we're going to talk about it. Specifically, if you're feeling, for example, your brain energy is running low, is your mental stamina or ability to work plagued by brain fog, or do you feel on edge or frequently irritable? It could be an issue with your glial cells. So we're going to talk about exactly what glial cells are, what they do, and how you can enhance them, not only nutritionally, but just with overall lifestyle. So that's going to be a great topic, and we're really going to dive into specifics with that one. Then from there, a great interview with Sara-Chana Silverstein. And she is a master herbalist. She's actually made the rounds on many talk shows, and she's very popular. She wrote a great book called Moodtopia: How to Enhance Your Life and De-Stress Using Herbal Remedies. And she's going to do a masterclass with us on different types of herbs and exactly how you can use them and what they do, what they're for. So you guys are really going to enjoy that conversation. So that's what we got coming up for you this week. As always, the latest and brand new information. Make sure you go to georgebatista.com to check out all the articles. You can watch the show. You can listen to the show on there as well. If you want to join the newsletter, you can just sign up on there as well. And of course, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because that's how we get the information out and that's how we grow the show. All right. So before I dive into our topics today, just wanted to, on a personal note, just kind of say one thing. First of all, I want to dedicate this show to my grandmother, Luz Batista. And the reason why I want to do that is because yesterday she passed away at the ripe old age of 95. And we went to see her 3 weeks ago in Puerto Rico, and she was in a nursing home. And it was a great visit with her because, number one, I hadn't seen her in so many years. I hadn't been back there in many, many years. And she had never met my daughter. Because, my daughter was born and we hadn't been to Puerto Rico since. And my grandmother was in Puerto Rico probably the last 30 years. So we got to visit with her, and not only us, but friends and family. We had uncles there, we had cousins there, and we were all together with her. We took pictures with her, and she was so happy. And, just kind of thinking about it, when you live to an age like 95, and you've inspired generations, your kids, your grandkids, and great grandkids, you've lived a great life, so with not only just inspiring, but with your wisdom, your knowledge, your humor. And that's what she did. She did that. So so she led a great life, and she did a lot. And so, she will be missed, obviously, but I just wanted to dedicate this show to her. Thank you, Grandma, for everything. Thank you for taking care of me when I was a kid. And until I see you again, rest in peace. All right, guys, let's get started with our articles for the week. All right, first, from Wellness Resources: brain fog and irritability linked to glial cell health. So let's talk a little bit about it. Okay. So for example, we want to take a look at stress tolerance, right? How your brain handles stress. Okay. But stress and all these types of feelings of irritability and everything are greatly impacted by your brain's ability to manage daily repair needs. Okay. So sleep quality, quantity, emotional stress, hormone levels, blood pressure, blood sugar, nutrient status, oxygenation of tissues, trauma, illness, everything is affected by the internal environment of your brain. Okay, so you need to manage this, right? So there are specialized cells in your brain that work daily to maintain a healthy environment and keeping the residents The resident housekeeping cells happy is one of the big goals because you have to keep them in balance basically so they work well and they, again, keep your brain working properly and everything in good shape. So enter the glial cell. So what is the glial cell? Okay, so your nervous system is made up of many types of cells, nerve cells, immune cells, including some called the glial cells. Now, glial or glia, G-L-I-A, is a Greek word that means glue. And there are three types of glial cells. There's the astrocytes, there's the oligodendrocytes, and the microglial cells. Now, glial cells make up about half of the mass of your brain. And microglial cells are the smallest of the glial cells and make up about 10% of all brain cells. Microglial cells were first identified about 100 years ago, and they're the first line of immune defense cells in your nervous system. And you have to keep in mind that they actively work to keep your brain cells clean, healthy, and within a stable environment. So that's why they're really, really important. So we really have to pay attention to making sure they're, working properly. Okay. Some things that the glial cells do: they remove nerves and cells that aren't working well. Microglial cells provide protection and nutritional support to nerves. They clean up protein debris and trash from your nerves. They regulate inflammatory responses and nerve connections. Microglial cells are on constant surveillance in the brain for signs of stress within your brain, your spinal cord, and eyes throughout your lifetime. Okay? Now, when stress occurs in the brain, microglial cells undergo a multi-stage activation process to become an activated microglial cell. So they migrate to areas within the nervous system to support and stabilize tissues that are under stress and or threat. And during this process, the glue-like functionality of the microglial cell allows them to change shape, allows them to move, to investigate, to engulf, and to remove the stressor. And that's the key. Okay. Now, what happens, let's say, if you really have chronic stress going on, right? You've just got stress for a long period of time, and your microglial cells can become chronically activated. Okay. And this is what creates a toxic response, a stressful environment in your brain. Now, if your microglial cells stay engaged in active duty for higher amounts, okay, you end up getting these high amounts of stress. For example, reactive oxygen species, and then you start getting these constant inflammatory markers like NF-kappa B, tumor necrosis factor alpha, cytokines, nitric oxide. All are released, creating more oxidative stress. That's not what you want. Okay. Now, what are the stressors that activate microglial cells? Okay, so microglial cell activation is triggered by many different types of stress. These include sleep deprivation. We've talked about sleep deprivation on this show. Even one night of sleep deprivation can wreak havoc on your brain. Just insomnia, disrupted circadian rhythms, illness, infection can do this. Chronic inflammation, trauma, elevated homocysteine levels, lipopolysaccharides, what's called LPS, toxins, aging, alcohol, chronic stress, even drug side effects, radiation exposure, and all these factors can actually wreak havoc and actually activate these microglial cells and then keep them activated again for long periods of time. So, what can we do to support the glial cells and make sure that they're working properly? Okay, so support activities and nutrients for microglial cell health. Obviously, there's the obvious ones. The adequate quality sleep and regular physical exercise are essential to this process. Okay, so you have to combine these obviously with whole foods, with a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, fiber, fermented foods. Okay, obviously getting all the antioxidants in. That is one of the keys, obviously, to making sure not only you want to bring down inflammation, but again, to assist your glial cells and help with this cleanup process and making sure that they don't, chronically overactivate over time. So, some of the important antioxidants for microglial cell function include R-alpha lipoic acid, turmeric and or curcumin, right? Fisetin, N-acetylcysteine, and coenzyme Q10. ubiquinol, okay, melatonin, glutathione, resveratrol, quercetin, broccoli, which has sulforaphane in it. Okay. We also have magnesium and zinc and omega 3s, DHA and EPA, and choline. Now, combining antioxidants with B vitamins helps to manage stress and homocysteine metabolism, mitochondria, and energy production because we know that B vitamins are one of the big things that you need not only for detoxification but for energy, for your mitochondria to keep homocysteine down, and then obviously getting the antioxidants working together with the B vitamins. That is very, very important. This can all work together. And keep in mind, DHA as well, the essential fatty acids, specifically the DHA that can cross the blood-brain barrier and also help with making sure that these things are working properly. So how do we optimize our antioxidant reserves? We're going to talk about what nutritional supplements you can use to help with the optimization of the glial cell. And of course, we look at wellness resources because those are the supplements that we talk about on this show. So great supplement support for your glial cells are the Daily Energy Multiple Vitamin, the Daily DHA, Brain Protector, and Relax Mag. Now, again, Relax Mag is a great one because it has magnesium glycinate in it, and it's a fantastic supplement if you're on edge, if you're dealing with a lot of stress, you want to calm down. You could take it at night before you go to bed. It will help you sleep better, but you can also take it during the day, and it actually does not give you a drowsy effect, but yet it gives you a calming effect. And that's the big difference, right? Because you don't want to be drowsy, especially if you're driving to work, something like that. You want to be nice and calm, and Relax Mag is great for that, okay? But if you want more in-depth support than those, you can also look at PEA Ultra. I've talked about PEA on the show. Repair Plus, Super Brain Booster, Activator Plus, and Glutathione Ultra. All of these supplements are fantastic. They can be used in combination with the antioxidants to help to support brain function, to help calm you, to help bring down inflammation, and to help give you an overall sense of well-being. So again, go to myvitaminresource.com if you want to take a look at all these supplements that we've gone over here. But obviously, protecting and or enhancing your glial cells and specifically your microglial cell health is something that you need. So again, if you're feeling, again, brain energy running low, you're feeling irritable, you've got long bouts of stress from work, from all the stuff from life that we're all dealing with, and you feel like you're chronically stressed, you don't know how to get out of it, check out these supplements and check out these different ways you can use to help to enhance your glial cells and just your brain health in general. Exercise on top of that, obviously, because a lot of people use exercise to bring down stress. So exercise is great for that. It also enhances BDNF production in your brain. So exercise in combination with the nutrition and the supplements and everything, great way to enhance your glial cell health. So just some information on glial cells for those of you who don't know. You can check out the article on the georgebatista.com website on glial cells. Fantastic information on this. Just another way to enhance your brain health, to keep you sharp, to keep you healthy, overall mental clarity. Very, very key, especially these days. All right. So next, again, we have a great interview with Sara-Chana Silverstein. She's going to be talking about herbs. She's going to be talking about her book, Moodtopia, and she's going to give a masterclass on herbs. You guys are really going to enjoy this. So check out my interview with Sara-Chana Silverstein, coming to you right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show, and I am extremely excited to welcome my guest. I have on Sara-Chana Silverstein, and you guys are going to be really excited about this interview because she's got some great information on herbs, and she's got a book, and she's got so many things going on, and so I want to give her background before I bring her up. So Sara is a master herbalist. Sara spent much of her time teaching women about the use of complementary medicine, a practice which integrates alternative and conventional medicines. She shows her clients how using herbs can help them become emotionally and physically stronger. She is trained in classical homeopathy and as an International Board-Certified Lactation Breastfeeding Consultant. She has helped over 18,000 babies successfully breastfeed. Sara is a columnist. She's a keynote speaker, adult education teacher, community advocate for women and children, a wife, a mother of 7 children as well. And she is also the author of the book Moodtopia, showing you how to tame your moods, distress, and find balance using herbal remedies. And I am absolutely honored and privileged to have her on this program. Thank you so much for being here, Sara. It's a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, George. It's an honor, and I really respect the work that you're doing. And what I really love is you said that I help educate women about herbal medicine. So I want to let you know that I also enjoy educating men about herbal medicine. I remember I was doing a TV show for CBS in LA, and I had just written my book, Moodtopia, which focuses a lot on women's emotional health, just because it tends to be that women read self-help books more. And so I had this really adorable young guy. He's interviewing me, and I said, well, what are we going to do? You're a guy. So he got on the show and he said, George, this is a show about men's emotional health, and we're going to talk about how men can. And it was so amazing. And he said, Sara-Chana, we need it too. We may not ask for it. So we're going to say, George, it's for women, men, young girls, young guys, and everybody in between. They all need a little bit of guidance with herbal medicine.
Absolutely, absolutely. As a guy who lives with 2 women from both ends of the spectrum, I have my wife obviously, and then I have a 16-year-old who's getting to that point where she's trying to find herself and trying to figure out life and all this type of stuff, and I'm struck with my own moods. I'm like going through all different types of emotions and moods and stress, obviously, and stuff like that. So I'm absolutely sure that I can use herbs in my life as well, because as a mom, when you have children driving and they just started driving and they're driving to work and they first get their license, the terror, right? It's
Terror.
It's one of those things. So yeah, absolutely. So all right, great. So there's so much we can dive into, but first, for those folks who are not familiar with you, obviously, you've made the rounds. You've been on many news shows. You've been I know you've gotten praise from some of my heroes, such as Deepak Chopra has talked about you, and Christy Brinkley, I know, has mentioned you, as well as Mayim Bialik. So you've got a lot of people who are really looking at your work, and I think it's fantastic. Talk about a little bit how you got into it. Why being an herbalist? What attracted you to that?
Well, there's so many different stories, but I'll tell you one that I was invited through Yale University to go to Oxford University in a summer program. And I was a girl that was raised with seasonal allergies, spring allergies, fall allergies. I'd have allergies in the summer. I did all the rounds of, these immune building injections that they gave for people with allergies. And I still was kind of addicted to my antihistamines. Right. So I get on the plane, and this was way before Amazon. I don't want to age myself. And I end up at Oxford University. And the next thing I know, I'm sneezing. My eyes are itchy. And I'm like, how am I going to concentrate? So at that point, there weren't acute care centers on every corner. And I didn't even have insurance for overseas. So I didn't know what to do. So I walked into a health food store and I was like, my eyes are itchy. My nose is itchy. What are we going to do? Any suggestions? And they said, yeah, take these freeze-dried nettles and take some eye bright and get back to me. And I was like, well, it's not going to work, but let me at least try. And within 24 hours, George, I can't say the herbs cured me, right, but my eyes were not itching. I was not sneezing obsessively. With an antihistamine, it's a 24-hour drug, so it does stay in your system for 24 hours. With herbs, the brain reads herbs as food, takes what it needs and dispels what it doesn't need. So you do have to repeat the herbs more often, but like there was no like coming off of the drug. There was no dry mouth. There was no feeling of exhaustion like antihistamines, especially older antihistamines. And I was like, who cares if I have to take this every 6 to 8 hours? This is great. So when I got back from Oxford, I was like, maybe botanical medicine is where I should focus. And the truth be told was I spent a lot of time in the Oxford Library looking up plant-based medicine because there wasn't so much written about it at the time. And I knew there was something that allopathic conventional medicine was missing.
Right. Absolutely. You know, it's very similar to the way I looked at it when I was younger. And, you know, it's the same type of thing. There was that missing piece that I wasn't getting from, you know, the regular conventional medicine. And then all of a sudden, when I went to the more, you know, natural side of things, things started to work because I was feeding my body exactly what it needed. And my body was saying, yes, this is exactly what I need to, you know, to start the process of healing. So I completely identify with that. Now, you mentioned botanical medicine, you know, and a lot of people don't know what it is. You know, a lot of people heard it, and you know, there are people out there who still think it's a voodoo type thing. You know, so talk to us about botanical medicine, exactly what it is, kind of demystify it for us.
Perfect. So I want to begin with something you and I discussed before the show began. When not against conventional medicine. I always tell my clients, if you break your leg, please do me a favor, go get an x-ray, get a cast, then come to me and I'm going to give you some herbs to help knit the bone. If you have a root canal, you don't have to call your herbalist. You go to the dentist, you get a root canal fixed, and then you can come back to an herbalist and say, why are my teeth falling apart? So in my office, we honor stitches, MRIs, CAT scans. Those are all very important tools for herbalists to work with also. So I did a 5-year program in classical homeopathy. I did over 2,000 clinical hours. Then I went back to school again and did a 3-year herbal apprentice program with another 1,000 clinical hours. So when you work with herbalists that are well trained, man, we have so much education behind us. We have anatomy and physiology. We have disease process. We're not just, you know, we're not just on Instagram doing a weekend show, you know, a weekend class, which is really important to understand. When you come into an herbalist, I take an hour and a half with every client. I want to know everything. What are they eating? Are they exercising? What do their stools look like? Tell me about their birth if they know about it, because we know that it is a whole person medicine. And I want to tell you, it's so funny, George, because one of my kids is getting a PhD in physics, and he was doing some research on a handheld MRI machine and other kind of really innovative research. And he says, Ma, you're going to love this. And I said, what? He goes, do you know what the future of medicine is? And I'm like, what? He goes, it's going to be individualized medicine. I was like, well, what do you think your mom's been doing for the past 25 years? So we look at each person. So even if someone has a strep throat, everybody's going to present in a different way. One kid could prefer cold drinks. The next child could prefer warm drinks. Really, sometimes kids get an itchy bottom just from strep. So we all present it in such a different way. So it's not that I want to treat the strep. I want to treat how it's presenting in your body. So I didn't even answer your question yet about botanical medicine. I just wanted to explain how we look at the person. We want to know their symptoms, how it manifests in their body, what makes them unique in the way this infection or chronic condition is presenting in their body. So what is botanical medicine, was your question? So botanical is plant-based medicine. We want to call it herbal medicine, but we also use medicinal mushrooms, which are not an herb. We also use the bark of a tree, which is not an herb. So really, I'm a master herbalist who uses a wide variety of botanical medicine. So I know that the dandelions that are considered a weed in everybody's front lawn is one of the most phenomenal herbs on the planet. And I also know that the root of the plant heals the body in a different way than the leaves. And the leaves of the plant heal the body in a different way than the flower and a different way than the seeds. So you can, with one wild weed, make about 10 to 15 different medicines just with the plant dandelion. So dandelion root, for instance, is for stones, kidney stones, bladder stones, the famous gallbladder stones. The leaves will reduce inflammation if you have high blood pressure and you tend to hold on to water, have edema or swelling. We know that the flower, when you put it in an oil, can help with, for a massage oil, with deep tissue pain. It can also help if you have skin tags. So that's just one plant that has so many medicinal properties.
Wow. Unbelievable. That's fantastic. So, and you're absolutely right. It's about looking at the whole. They always talk about holistic, right? Looking at the whole person, because everything affects everything else when you kind of drill it down, basically. Now, specifically about herbs, because I've talked about them a little bit on my show, but I've done a couple of shows on it, but I've actually had a gentleman named Bill Rawls, who is he wrote a book on it as well as, because he dealt with his Lyme disease with herbs. So he talked on this show a little bit about it too. So I have a healthy respect for herbs. Now, is like, what are the best types of, not the best types, but let's say the forms? Is there a specific way to take an herb that is better than others? Like, certain supplements, their forms are better than others. What is the best way or the best form of herbs that are the best to take?
Great question. So for those of you that are viewing this, I'm going to show them to you. And those of you who are just listening in audio, I'm going to try to explain it to you. So we have herbs in many different forms. We have the roots of plants. We have the leaves of plants. So I'm holding up a lavender, and that's the flower. And we know that lavender can make a phenomenal aromatherapy, essential oil, but we also use it in tea form and tincture form. Here I'm holding up just rose petals. All roses are edible. I'm not saying that you should go to your florist, certainly not, but any wild or roses that don't have pesticides on them. And I have some plants. I'm holding up a plant that's in a powdered form, and I should be holding up a plant that's in a root. So we're going to take the plant, and we have different ways of using it. So one of my favorite ways of using herbal medicine is to make it into a tincture, because here's the story. You pick parsley. It looks gorgeous in the store. It's bright green, wonderful. You leave it in your fridge for 2 days and it's wilting, turns a little white. Over 4 days, it's kind of really disintegrating. You're going to throw it in the garbage. So we know once you extract a plant from the ground, it starts to lose its properties of taste and flavor and medicinal properties. So what people have been doing for literally thousands of years is, and I'm holding up a glass jar now, you take the plant, this happens to be rose hips, and you put it in a glass jar. You cover it with grain alcohol, like 100 proof is my best. You let it sit for 6 to 8 weeks. You strain it, and you have what is called a tincture, or it's in liquid form. So why do I like it in tincture and liquid form? Because most of my clients are like type A personality, on the run, working too much, not sleeping enough. And we tend to not be a culture, at least in America, of tea time. It's not like everybody stops at 3 o'clock and is, oh, let's have tea time. Like, it's not part, like there's like drive-through Starbucks. Like, we don't even sit down and have a cup of coffee very much in our culture anymore. So when you have a tincture or liquid form, you literally can like keep it in your upper pocket, keep it in your backpack, and you can take it as needed. So herbs in tincture form are absorbed very quickly in the body. If someone has a problem with alcohol and is part of Alcoholics Anonymous, you can get herbs in a glycerite, which is a vegetable glycerite. I like them in tincture alcohol form because it just, the body absorbs it so quickly. So you literally take the tincture, you take a shot glass, you shoot it in the cup, you add a little bit of grape juice, boom, and down it as fast as you can. And that makes it easy for people to be compliant, because a lot of people come to me, they've been to other practitioners, they have like 45 supplements. And they're like, I don't even know what to do with them, Sara-Chana. I'm like, well, let's start with one.
Right.
So what happens is in my book, Moodtopia, which is available all over the internet, I talk about each herb individually so people are empowered to understand what these herbs are. And we're going to go through some names of herbs. But when a client comes into me, by the way, George, I don't know if you noticed, but like human beings are super complex. So I usually mix anywhere from 3 to 8 herbs together
Okay.
because they work together. Like you can have someone who's nervous, anxious, has constipation, chronic sinuses, and trouble falling asleep. So I'm going to make a combination that's going to kind of tap into all those things. You can have the next person that barely eats, totally neurotic, a nervous wreck all the time, and is obsessed with exercising. They're going to need a different herbal combination.
Right.
So I'll mix many different herbs together. Now, you can take it in tea form, which is lovely if anybody wants to, sit down, put their feet up, listen to a little music. I love it. So I'm holding up a glass, I have a glass jar, but this is like a little glass pot, and it's got a filter in it. And you can buy herbs in bulk and fill this up. When you're making an herbal tea, if you're using tea bags, you have to use between 3 and 4 of the herbal tea bags, because if you just put in one tea bag, you're flavoring the water. But if you want the medicine, you must use more. And I have a little travel jar that I love here. And this has some herbs in it, and it's got a little filter on the top here. And you could literally fill this with herb, add some honey, maple syrup, whatever you want, and then you fill it up with warm water, and you can carry this wherever you want to go. So I do use some herbs in tea form. I use herbs topically in an oil form. What I use most in my practice is herbs in tincture. But if you do Ayurvedic medicine, which is from India, they like to use the herbs in powder form. They'll roll these up into balls. You must take more of it. Like the dose is like a tablespoon 3 times a day. Again, with my Americans, I'm lucky if they take their herbs twice a day. This is a little more complex to use it. In my book, I do talk about herbal balls. You can make them into Zoom balls, and different way to use powdered herbs. But for my clientele, I practice in New York and LA, like the 2 most neurotic states in all of the US.
That's true.
That's why tinctures here and tinctures there. But those are the main forms of herbal botanical medicine.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a master class right there. Interesting. In going through your book, there were some concepts in there that were really, really, really good, because you really are detailed in how and I definitely want to dive into the beginning story, because you really, the way you talked about bringing up your environment. And I want to dive into that specifically as well. But one of the things that you mentioned, and I want you to highlight, is the cycle of sanity.
I love that.
Can you explain exactly what that is?
So in my practice, I deal with chronic ear infections, chronic strep throat, high blood pressure, diabetes. And when I was writing a book, my first book, my second book that I'm in the middle of writing is for children, pediatrics, I was like, what should I write a book on? There's just so much about herbal medicine. So then I realized that there's not a lot of information about the use of herbs with psychological challenges, sadness, frustration, anxiety, all the things we deal with on a daily basis. So that's the focus of my book, Moodtopia. Right. But we know as an herbalist that you can't just hand someone an herb and say, okay, you're healed, good to go, goodbye, see you later. You have to make some lifestyle changes. You have to exercise, eat healthy, maybe work on your sleep. So I also spoke and did a lot of research about how we function. So one of them is the cycle of sanity. So I talk about how the most important emotion I found after 30 years of working in this business is that aha moment, like, oh, that's why my husband's like that, or oh, now I get why my boss is like that, or a child's teacher, like, oh, okay, that makes so much sense. So when we get this aha moment, it brings us to a higher level of emotional health. Because otherwise we wallow in this, why is that person mean to me? Why is that person bullying me? So the cycle of sanity talks about that we're in a situation that could frustrate us. And we can get angry, sad, overwhelmed. Then when we have that insight of how to fix that problem, that aha moment, like, oh, well, maybe I should get my car tuned up more often and it's going to stop dying on the side of the road. All of a sudden we're to that place of sanity. So the way we're created is we've got to have that agitation in our system to get us to the point where we understand solutions. So when you look at my picture of cycle of sanity, if someone gets stuck in being frustrated all the time, who can be around them? Yeah. If someone's sad all the time, I mean, you can be sad for an hour or two, a day or two. But if you get stuck in it, you can't have a relationship with someone that's sad all the time. Depression, I mean, I understand depression. Sure. So when I talk about this cycle of sanity, I'm explaining that normal, typical, average people who are functioning in the world go through a variety of emotions all the time. We just shouldn't think that we're abnormal because they're not teaching this in school. Correct. In elementary school, they should be teaching the kids it is so normal to be frustrated. It is so normal. Maybe they're doing it a little bit more now. Certainly not when you and I were in school, George. But, they're coming around to it. But what happens is a lot of people say, something's wrong with me if I'm sad. Yeah. And the answer is no. That's a very important emotion. It allows you to be compassionate with someone else that's sad. Mm-hmm. It gives you a time to be introspective. And it gives you the impetus to go ahead and make changes. I'll give an example. I come from LA. I was born in the Hollywood Hills to the right of the Hollywood sign in the canyons. And my mother used to drive me into the city to go to school. There were no buses that went in the city. And there was this one corner that was a near accident, like every morning. And my mother would say, oh, well, thank God we weren't killed today. Like approaching this corner, because in the Hollywood Hills, there's a lot of twists and turns. Right. So after a while, she got really frustrated, like, there needs to be a stop sign here. Why isn't there a stop sign here? So this was way before Facebook or anything. So she calls the city and the city says, yeah, if you get 1,000 signatures, we'll put a stop sign there. So my mother, all of 5 feet tall, went door to door getting all these signatures, right? And she was so frustrated by the work that was involved. But if she wasn't so frustrated and so angry, she'd never have the impetus to do the work. So to this day, George, there is a stop sign on that corner. So if she was lackadaisical, like, okay, all right, I'll let someone else deal with it, nothing would have gotten done. So this frustration, this anger that we look at as such a negative emotion, it's negative. We hang out there too long, George. But to get angry and problem solve and take action, that anger was the best emotion that ever came into that person.
Absolutely well said. And you're right, because as a society, you're absolutely right. We're told that you cannot be angry. You cannot be, you shouldn't feel this. You shouldn't feel that. And we're always trying, and I mean, the point is, and one of the things I don't agree with is that I think we medicate too much our emotions. Okay. And, even grief and these types of things. But it's well put. And I really liked, and that was one of the things out of your book that I really thought was a revelation to me, that cycle of sanity and the way you looked at it. And I actually had to read that part a couple of times because I was like, wow, it really hit me. That really hit me. And it made so much sense, especially after going back, a couple of times through it. So that's why I really wanted you to talk about it here. Thank you for that, by the way. But another thing that I got out of your book that was really, that really hit me was the story you told in the beginning, was about your daughter was in the hospital. And the wave of emotions that you went through during that time. So you had a pretty serious condition, and you were going through this wave of emotion, but that light bulb kind of went off, and you started to, what did you do? You changed your environment. You changed the environment. You changed your mood. You changed the environment in the room, right? In the hospital room. You brought the flowers, and things started to change. And I thought that was absolutely a great way of looking at it because, people could just wallow in the situation, without thinking about it. Sometimes, and I think you talk about it in the book as well, the act of smiling, the act of, just putting your shoulders, the act of the way physically, the way you are can affect what your mental state is. Tony Robbins talks about it. He says, emotion is created by motion. And you had a great way of talking about it. So talk a little bit about your concepts as far as just emotion and again, changing your environment and how people can do that.
Right. So sometimes we can't cure a person and sometimes we can't change the situation that we're in. And I can't say that I was a perfect mom, but we lived in the hospital for 7.5 months, actually 4 months in a hospital and then 3.5 in a rehab. It was a very long period of time to be with my daughter. And hospital rooms are very depressing and really sad, and they don't smell good.
Right.
So the first thing I did was I didn't ask anybody, but I started putting up different posters and different pictures on the walls. I went to a store around the corner and I bought all these plants, and there were just plants everywhere in the room. And then I started burning essential oils.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we'll talk a little bit about essential oils, but they're not going to cure cancer. I want to say that up front.
Right.
And on Instagram, which I am on, and I'd love everybody to follow me at Sara-Chana S. I would love it. I put up little videos, but there's a lot of misinformation. But one thing essential oils can do is change the smell of the environment and the energy of the environment. So I started spraying. I couldn't burn in the hospital, different essential oils. And the nurses would come in and say, wow, what's that smell today? And I'd say, that's Lang Lang. And they said, never heard of Lang Lang. The next day they'd come in and they'd say, Sara-Chana, what's the smell today? And I'd say bergamot. And what happened was the nurses liked coming to our room because it always had a different smell. It had a different energy in it. And some of the nurses would say, can I eat my lunch in here? It smells better here than in the commissary, right?
Yes.
And what happened was my daughter started getting, I think, even better care because our environment was so inviting for them.
Right.
And it really changed this really negative energy that was going on with my daughter's challenge. She had actually had transverse myelitis and became paralyzed with the shoulders down. I mean, it was not a lovely experience, to say the least. And I want to tell you that I have a monthly workshop called Moodtopia Academy. And we have people from all over the world that join us for actual classes. It's a Zoom class. Like I really PowerPoint teach. And I had a guest lecturer that is a master aromatherapist. And when you spoke about just feeling more self-confident, what she does with her clients with aromatherapy, if they don't have that self-confidence, they feel insecure, she actually has them put the essential oils on her neck and behind the knees, because she says that the first act of getting that self-confidence is walking in a way that you present yourself with self-confidence. So she said when you put the essential oil behind the knee and behind the neck, they can hold their head up better and there's more energy in their legs. And I was like, I never knew that. I mean, I'm so glad that I invited her to teach in my school, because what a brilliant idea. So is the essential oil going to take away my childhood trauma? No. Is the essential oil going to take away my insecurity? You look in the mirror, positive affirmations. Oh, I'm so gorgeous. Yeah, if I had better skin. I'm so thin if I lost 10 pounds. So we get into this cycle with positive affirmations like, do we believe it? Is it really true? That's a whole nother show and a whole nother discussion. Sure. But when we put an essential oil on us, it's not going to cure all those problems, but you can walk with grace, walk with strength. And sometimes you have to do the action before the mind follows.
Correct.
So that's one thing we can do with essential oils. When my daughter's in the hospital, believe me, I wanted to crawl under the bed, hide, and cry, but I still had to function as her mom. As I said before, I'm a mom of 7 kids. I have 2 girls and 5 boys. I still had to function in so many other capacities that, I had to pull it together even if I didn't want to. So those essential oils really also help me take the next step and get through another day.
Absolutely. And you talked a lot about energy. And really at the end of the day, it's all about energy, right? We're energy beings. That's who
Yeah.
we are. When someone walks into the room, you can feel their energy, right? Then sometimes that energy can bring the room down or lift the room up.
Yeah.
So, and it's just one. I'm very much into, and I've gotten into more lately about just energy as a whole and energy healing and those types of things. I just think there's so much about it, and there's so much that's untapped about it that there's so much more to learn about these types of things. So I find it fascinating. One question I had for you was, let's say someone who is they've never done herbs before, but let's say they're under the care of a doctor or a psychiatrist or something. Let's say they're dealing with some kind of depression or some kind of mental health issues, and let's say they're on a medication. Can they come to you and work with you, using herbs while on a medication, and do that safely?
Yes, and that's when you really need to work with a master herbalist,
Hmm.
because we understand which herbs can be taken with prescription and allopathic medicine.
Right.
That's not really the time to experiment yourself. But let's talk for a minute about those people that some days feel they need psychotropic meds and other days they feel they don't.
Sure.
And some days they feel totally together, and other days they're feeling like they're falling apart. So that's a perfect candidate for herbs. So
Hmm.
let's take a moment, if you don't mind, and talk about some herbs. So there's an
Sure.
herb called skullcap.
Hmm.
And skullcap, I would like best in tincture or liquid form. And skullcap is for nervous anxiety. I'm nervous because my daughter just started driving, as you said, and I'm a
Hmm.
nervous wreck every time she's
Yes.
out. Or I have a job interview, or it's after a divorce and you're going to start dating again, or you have to do some public speaking at your job and you don't like to speak publicly. So many reasons that people get nervous and anxious, those butterflies in their stomach. So skullcap is a phenomenal herb to help with nervous anxiety.
Hmm.
Can you take it 3 times a day for the rest of your life? Absolutely. It's in the mint family. You can take it morning before you go to bed, dinner time, morning, afternoon, dinner time. You can take it 3 times a day, or you can take it as needed. So
Hmm.
if a person's going through a difficult thing, they're going through a new job, they have to move locations, they're selling their house and moving into a condo, or even moving from a condo into a house, I say take the skull cap 3 times a day, lower your cortisol levels, which is your stress hormones, which is a chemical in your body. And you're going to see it's going to be easier to get along with your loved ones or not fight as much with your hate ones. And you're going to be able to function a lot better. So that's an amazing herb. Another one of my favorite herbs is an herb called motherwort.
Hmm.
Motherwort is for hormonal gloominess. When you feel like everything's working, but you feel this black cloud descending. Now, the history of motherwort is to be used with women during hormonal, during their cycle, during perimenopause, during menopause. But I have to tell you, George, that I had a guy in my office. I had worked with his wife, and she sent her husband. And he was complaining and telling me everything was wrong. He was so gloomy. He literally looked like that Peanuts character that had the cloud of dirt around him,
Right.
that dark
Right.
cloud. And I was like, this guy needs motherwort. But I'm like, no, it's a woman's herb. And then I'm like, oh, he needs motherwort. Oh, it's a woman's herb. Going back and forth. I finally said, you know what? He needs motherwort. So he took motherwort, and his wife called me a couple days later and goes, oh my gosh, he's so much less grumpy. Like, high five. So men can also be hormonal. And
Yes.
teenage boys, I'm sorry, you get them between 14 and 18, they are hormonally out of their mind. And men, they can go through not their menopause, their andropause, and they can also be grumpy. So the
Yeah.
question is, can you mix skullcap in the same cup with motherwort? Of course you can. You can
Okay.
be hormonally gloomy, and you can also be a nervous wreck. So this is a great combination, motherwort and skullcap, for people of all ages.
Wow. What about and I've talked a little bit about them on this show, adaptogens for stress, for example.
So an adaptogen is a term that was given to an herb that helps the body handle stress better.
Hmm.
And an adaptogen doesn't go to a specific part of the body. It works wherever it manifests. So
Hmm.
if I have someone that comes in with chronic sinusitis, they get sinus infections, stuffy nose, I'm going to give them an herb called Yerba Santa, which is specific for sinuses. If I have someone that has a chronic winter cough, I may use an herb called Osha, works on the lungs. Someone has constipation, I'm going to give them some slippery elm bark.
Right.
But an adaptogen will go not to just the sinuses or the intestines, it goes to the whole body. So adaptogens are herbs to take for a longer period of time, like that sinus infection. They come to me on a Monday. By Wednesday, I want it to be like 80% better.
Right.
But when we're going through stress, you're going through law school, medical school, you're just going through regular university, you can take an adaptogen for many years to help the body cope with living in a city, smog, loud noises, whatever you're going through. So I love adaptogens. I do speak about it in my book, Mootopia.
Great, great, yeah. And again, yeah, it's definitely something that we've highlighted on this show, and I think it's definitely helpful for people. Now, one of the actually be I'm curious because so we talked before we started this, and I had mentioned that I had gone to Puerto Rico, and I had your book with me, and it was definitely my reading not only on the plane but while I was sitting by the pool, just kind of relaxing. It was, but and it was fantastic. But you said that you had a story about Puerto Rico.
So after, I believe it was their hurricane, I wish I could remember the name of it, but Puerto Rico did not have electricity for well over a year.
Right. Yep.
And if you think about it, there were a lot of people that took statins, took
Hmm.
medicine for diabetes, for high blood pressure. And not only were planes not flying in there, but pharmacies were shut down.
Yep.
There was no electricity, and it was a very big problem. So there's an organization called Herbalists Without Borders. They have Doctors Without Borders, and we have what is called Herbalists Without Borders.
Interesting.
And so I remember hearing this herbalist speak, and I don't remember her name. I would love to honor her with this. But she spoke about how she got on a plane with a backpack filled with herbs, not even tinctures, just dried herbs. And she went to all the little small villages and started teaching them. I literally have chills because it's like mind blowing how to use herbs for their diabetes, how to use herbs for their blood pressure, because people were forgetting about these poor people in small towns.
Right.
No one was sending them blood pressure medicine or diabetic medicine. So she started with the dry herbs, and she taught them how to make it into tea form. If they had any liquor around, how to make it into tincture. And then she started teaching them how to grow it, getting them seeds, how to grow it themselves. And she tells the story that after a year of being there, these people were not only feeling better, but they were empowered on how to handle their physical challenge. They took their hibiscus flower. Hibiscus is one of the best flowers we have for high blood pressure. I'll tell another story about it after. But they would take their hibiscus tea 3 times a day, and their blood pressure was staying stable. So that was the Puerto Rico story. It was amazing. Then there was this MD in Chicago, in an inner city in Chicago. And she was talking about her clientele really had blood pressure problems. It was a real problem for them. And she said they would get the prescription of their medicines and they would take it for a while and then they wouldn't refill it. She had a lot of problems convincing people that high blood pressure can really cause problems. So she started, this is an MD, she started buying in bulk hibiscus flowers. And she taught her clients, patients, how to make iced hibiscus tea in the summer and warm hibiscus tea in the winter. And hibiscus is delicious. Like if anybody wants to start with an herb and if your blood pressure is fine, you can still drink hibiscus tea. Add a little bit of honey to hibiscus and it's like a fruit punch. It is delicious. And she said all of a sudden her patients' blood pressures were stabilizing. And they would on one day get a little bit of a headache, drink the tea 3 times a day. The next day they felt better, only twice a day. But she said the compliance was easy peasy. Like she didn't even have to convince them. They literally would call and say, can I refill? She was giving it away for free. Can you refill my hibiscus tea? And she said it was mind blowing. As a trained MD, she said that hibiscus tea was one of the best medicinal plants she ever saw in her life. So those are 2 great stories of empowering people, not just handing them a white pill and saying, take this. You don't even know what it does. Half the time clients will come in with me and they're on 5 different pharmaceuticals.
Right.
And I'll say, what are they for? And they're like, I don't know. I take the blue one in the morning with the yellow and the red. The afternoon, I take the white, and then I take the yellow one again. I'm like, why? They're like, I have no idea. So when you work with an herbalist, you know the name of the plant. I'll tell you the Latin name of the plant if you want. I'm going to give you either tea, powder, or tincture, depending on what I think you're going to be compliant with. You're going to know so much about that plant when you leave my office. You could go teach a class on it, because that's what real medicinal healing is about.
And that's part of the challenge. And I talked about this on another podcast. That's part of the challenges with folks in general, that they tend to, whether it's just their MD or whether it's, even on the natural side or an herbalist or whatever, they tend to just, okay, give me that, without even thinking about, okay, what is it? What does it do? How does it work in my body? Ask even, are there any side effects? That those are legitimate questions. I always tell people, even if you go to your MD's office and they give you something for high blood pressure, okay. And sometimes like a family member will come to me and I'll tell them, okay, they gave me something for my high blood pressure. Okay. What is it? I don't know. Oh, what's in it? I don't know. What are the side effects? I don't know. And I'm like, you're putting this into your body. You don't ask, so it's, and I'm sure you dealt with this. This is one of those challenges where people just don't ask questions. And one of the big things that I talk about on this show is ask questions. And that's why when you brought up, you actually educate the person on what they're taking. It is so important to do that, because people just have a hard time grasping that concept that I need to know what I'm putting in my body, right?
You can't be my client if you're not gonna want to learn.
Right.
And if someone has a chronic problem and also working with their doctor, I hand them a clipboard and I hand them a pen, and they have to write down questions to ask for their doctors. Mm-hmm. I can't work with them if they're not my partner. And I can't work with them if they're not willing to understand why we're doing what we're doing, and even how the heart works.
Yeah.
So they really change after working with an herbalist, because all of a sudden they have to understand what their challenge is, how that challenge happened. It could be genetic. It could just be genetic. In homeopathy, a classical homeopath, we talk about miasms. Miasm is a pre-inherited disposition towards a condition. Mm-hmm. So it could just be, it's going to happen to you, but it doesn't mean it can overtake you. So I also love educating my clients on how to ask the doctors, because most doctors go into medicine because they do want to help people.
Correct. Right.
And to go to medical school now, my daughter-in-law is in medical school, my son's in medical school, like, you're taking out loans, you're owing so much money that if you're not dedicated, no one's going into that kind of debt in this day and age. But a lot is what's going on with the insurance companies. They're not paying enough. They only have 7 minutes with each client. So sometimes if you really look in your MD's eyes and you've got this list of questions and you say, 7 minutes is not enough. I need 11 minutes. Right. A lot of these doctors will take a deep breath, sit down, and really think about your questions. And it's empowering for them also.
Absolutely. And because, and again, obviously this, most of the stuff is not taught in medical school. So they have to learn it outside of that. They have to get educated. And the good thing about it, and I have hope, that more and more doctors now are going to start getting into that, especially, after all the stuff we went through with COVID and all this type of stuff, and people's immune system, people, and I was saying this also on a podcast that I'm hopeful of just people in general that are going to start taking more responsibility because of everything we went through. Right. And I'm hoping that more doctors will start to get on board with the natural remedies and even combine it with their stuff. And, and I'm seeing a lot of integrative doctors. I'm seeing a lot of functional medicine doctors and working with herbalists, working with nutritionists, working, I've worked with doctors who, on the supplement side and nutrition side with patients, stuff like that. So, I'm hopeful that this will start to really kind of integrate more, because again, this is stuff that has been around, especially the herbs have been around for thousands of years. This is how we've healed ourselves as humans, way before the pharmaceuticals, way before all that type of stuff, and I think we need to really give it the respect that it deserves, in my opinion.
I agree. And I'll tell you a quick funny story that popped in my head when you were saying it. So my son's in medical school and he was raised by me, the herbalist, and he's really doing it. And we were talking about B12 levels.
Mm-hmm.
So I deal with a lot of pregnant women as a lactation consultant. I'm working with them during their pregnancy and postpartum. And so the levels of B12 are between 600 and 1200.
Right.
Okay. If you're between 600 and 1200, you're okay. So my son raised his hand and goes, well, what if you're 602? Like, you just made it. But maybe that person's going to function better if their B12 levels are up to 1200. Right. So the doctor said, I don't know, if they're in normal range, it's fine. So my son, being my son, said, well, wait a minute. Like, you don't think that some people will function better if they're 625, and some people really, really need to be at 925? Yeah. And the doctor said, well, that's not really how we practice medicine. And my son was like, well, I think that we'd have to see if you're at 600 and you're exhausted, because B12 is what gives you energy to walk, to go to the gym, to give you that energy. So if you're really only hanging out at 600, you may not have the energy to go to the gym even once a week or twice a week. Exactly. And if you get a B12 injection and your numbers go up to even 980, you will be surprised that client may turn around and have that energy to go to the gym. So I think that people are trying, and I think that's why it's important for consumers to know the important questions to ask. Like, really, that's normal range, but what does normal mean? Like, maybe I'm a little abnormal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, and it speaks to what you said in the beginning when when you had mentioned about individualized medicine, right? At the end of the day, really, that's what it should be, because everybody's different. Everybody comes to the table different, right? With a different, chemistry, different issues, different, and one herb may react differently in one person, and the same herb could react differently in another person, or the amounts are going to vary, or whatever the case may be. That's why we need to individualize it, and I think that, again, you're absolutely right. It's very important to do that. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully more and more doctors get on board with that type of thing, or at least try to integrate a little bit into their practice to try to, work with whatever the levels are and that type of stuff. So one could hope, right?
That's our goal.
Absolutely. So I want to give your website here. Okay, it's Sara-Chana.com. And I also want to, we have your book right there, Moodtopia, and I want everybody to check out her book. I know your book is available on Amazon, right?
It is, George. And I want to remind you, sorry to cut you off, but
that's okay.
If anybody goes to my website under free handouts, I have wonderful handouts laid out beautifully. You can print them and put them on your refrigerator. You can have them on your desktop. You can have them as a screenshot on your phone, where I talk about herbs, a natural first aid kit. So, once you go in there and sign up for those free handouts, you can download as many as you want, George. So there'll be a lot of the information that we've discussed in these handouts, and I want to make them available to your listeners.
Excellent. Absolutely. And again, it's about, listeners getting empowered and, doing the research and reading the material and educating themselves as well. Okay. I always say, even when I'm reading a study, I'm like, listen, don't go by what I say. Read the study yourself, read the information yourself, get yourself empowered with this information, and then pass it along. Pass it along to friends and family. Let's get this information out there, because people really need this information. So everybody check out her book. I would absolutely recommend it. It's fantastic. It's made it onto my shelf here in the back. And it's really, really good. It's very empowering, and I think you guys will get a lot out of it. And then check out her website as well. Also check out her Moodtopia Academy. Again, a wealth of information on there. She really is going to dive into it. So I think you guys will really get a lot of that. And Sarah, it has been a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being on with us.
Thank you, George. Keep up your amazing work, and I look forward to speaking with you and your audience again soon.
Thank you so much. Just hold on. We'll be right back. All right, guys. So again, this just unbelievable information here. Everybody, check out all her information. Make sure you follow her on Instagram and Facebook and all that, because she's doing some fantastic work out there. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for being with me this week. Make sure you take care of yourselves. Make sure you take care of each other, and as always, control your health. See you next time.